Hi, Luke.
How you going?
I'm really genuine inquirer, so some of my questions may be kiddie. So
I'll keep my answers nice and kiddie then.
Patrick from Thailand.
Patrick,
Josiah from the back.
how are you?
Gerald from PSCP.TV.
Gerald?
Emo from PSP.TV.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm Luke from NBA. Who wants to start?
Okay, I'll do.
Yes.
Okay, so how would you describe your stay so far, the past few days?
Well, it's been surprising. Really surprised by how just warm the Filipino people have been, and also how into the NBA everybody is. I haven't seen anything like it. I mean, it's like I'm back in Chicago. Anyway, you keep going.
Yeah, okay. So I'll ask another question. So have you tried any local food here?
Yeah, we've been to a couple of local restaurants, and the governor of, I better say this right, Cagayan de Oro, took us out and gave us a beautiful local meal yesterday. And then I had something interesting in room service last night too, which was a big rice paper roll with pork and prawns in it, and onion, like fresh onion. Anyway, that was a Filipino. It was beautiful as well. Can't go wrong.
okay, how young were you when you first started basketball?
I didn't actually play organised basketball till I was about 13, but I was around the game a lot because Mum and Dad played. I wanted to be a rugby player. I thought that was, I was Australian, I wanted to be a rugby player, but I started to grow a bit.
So what made you transfer to basketball? If you wanted to be a rugby player, what made you go to basketball?
I was long and skinny, wrong shape for rugby. And in Australia, you play a winter sport and a summer sport and a winter sport, and rugby and basketball were both in the winter, and I sort of had to choose one or the other. And I suppose for a 13-year-old, it's a funny choice, but I felt like basketball was the game that suited me better, even though I loved rugby.
So who taught you how to play?
My father, mostly, and I had brothers, so we played against each other in the backyard a lot. And yeah, I had some great junior coaches too. But I think the important thing when you're young is that unstructured, just playing basketball, not being trained all the time, but just experimenting and having fun. And we did a lot of that in my neighbourhood.
So you did a lot of sports when you were young besides basketball?
Yeah, and I think it's a good thing to do. I think really it's good for your development. I think there's a lot of players who've played other sports, like Steve Nash, for instance, got great footwork because he played soccer. And I think you got to test everything.
Luke, I wanted to deviate a little bit from the conversation, and I want to look back at your basketball days.
Yep, I'm happy to do that.
Where you were in an era where NBA elite centers were abundant in the NBA, like the Olajuwons, the E-Wings. Of course, that's what I'm about to tackle. I mean, you were never mentioned in the same breath as those people, but it can never be denied that you held your own against them. So I wanted to know, how do you prepare for this type of monsters in the game when you face them, like the Ewings or the Olajuwons and the Robinsons?
The first thing for me was getting stronger, because you can't handle Shaq or Ewing unless you're strong. So I had to do a lot of powerlifting. The other thing is tendencies. You need to learn tendencies. I watched a lot of video. So we're going to play Shaq in the playoffs. I'd ask the video guys, give me 20 moves to the left, 20 moves to the right, show me where he likes to get the ball. So I worked a lot on, okay, Shaq likes to get the ball there, so I'm not going to let him get the ball there. That's 90% of your defense is done if he gets the ball in a funny spot, Also, I felt like I did lots of things okay, but the one thing I did really well was guarding the big guys. So when those games came up where we had a Shaq or a Ewing, that was how I was going to earn my money. That was my meal ticket. That's how I was staying in the league. So I was always extra excited to play those guys, and I feel like that was my job to do.
In relation to that, did you, if any, have any difficulties syncing up with the Chicago Bulls type of play and Phil Jackson's triangle when you first came in as a Bull?
Yeah, interestingly, I think Phil would tell you that I picked it up faster than most people. because in Australia I grew up, we played a lot of motion offences. I struggled with the NBA style isolation offence.
Yeah.
So the movement and timing and spacing were all things that I'd grown up with, and that's what you need to run the triangle. So I found it really a breath of fresh air after a couple of years in NBA. In NBA, I'm never the guy on the post.
Yes.
You
seem to have fitted well on that type of play.
It suited me really well, and I think that was one of the things that the Bulls and the field did very well, was finding guys who suited what they were doing, and I suited them.
Last question. Do you think, in a way, how did, or if there, if it is indeed true, did Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson had something to do with your improvement as a basketball player?
Oh, they had everything to do with it.
Really?
Well, so I'm a young man from Australia trying to find my way in the NBA, trying to learn where the combat zones are and how to go about it. And the land, so I'm in Minnesota where no one knows because we're losing and the coaches were changing.
But isn't it that you were being billed with Raymond Felton as the Twin Towers of Minnesota back then?
Yeah.
Were there any pressures or, I mean?
Yeah, there was pressures, but definitely pressures. I was the highest paid kid on the team, and my game wasn't really ready. But I got to Chicago, and there's Phil Jackson, who was a great teacher. Also, my confidence was down a bit. He did a great job of rebuilding my confidence. And then Michael came along, and in his own way did the same thing. Taught me a lot of things about the game. So between the two, I think they recognised my strengths, understood my weaknesses, and focused on my strengths, and helped me work on my weaknesses. But I think they were massive in developing me as a player and also just as a bloke.
Thanks a
Does
lot.
that answer the question, you think?
Thanks a
Yeah,
lot.
you're welcome.
Okay, speaking of pressure, you were the first Australian ever to make it to the NBA. So how was the expectations, the pressure back there in Australia?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of pressure and big expectations, but I was a young man. I was 21 years old. I didn't even think about that. I was trying to figure out how to get my shot away, or how to guard David Robinson, or which car to buy. I'm a young man. I didn't think about the pressures of all that sort of thing. I think as I got older and more mature, I started to understand the pressures and take them more seriously.
So among the big men that you encountered in the court, who do you think is the toughest to defend?
Well, I told this story earlier, and I don't like telling it, but I'm going to tell it again. I saw David Robinson at the All-Star weekend a couple of weekends ago, and not a couple of months ago, I beg your pardon, in Orlando. And I was talking to him. First time I've ever spoken to David Robinson. And I told him about how when I was a rookie, he gave me 50 points in 2 games when I was a rookie. And what really made me quite sad was the fact that he didn't remember. I was really quite cut. He was the hardest person for me to defend. He was long, he was fast, he was strong. Shaq, I can fight with Shaq, and that suits me better than trying to run with David Robinson. Or Olajuwon. I sort of got a piece of Olajuwon now and again because he liked the low post, and I could sort of find him. Whereas Robinson was just slippery for me.
So you're the first Australian to ever play in the NBA.
I think I'm the first person from the Southern Hemisphere. I'm playing with the whole half of the world.
Okay. So Andrew Bogut was the first Australian ever drafted first. So how would you rate his career so far?
I think he's clearly the second best player that Australia's ever played. No, that's a joke. He's probably. Obviously, he's a far. As an individual, his abilities are far greater than mine were. He's more dynamic, he's a better scorer, he's a better rebounder. So I think he's a fantastic player, and he plays full throttle all the time, and that's probably his greatest strength, and that's also probably why he gets hurt. But I think I'd like to have him on my team, and we're going to miss him at the London Olympics because it looks like he's not coming.
So have you spoken to him about? Have you ever mentored him, what you did in the NBA?
No, he pissed me off early in his career, so I didn't talk to him a lot early. I met him for the first time last year in a lockout. He was training in Australia, and I was with our national team. I had a chat to him. But he doesn't need me to mentor him. He knows what's going on.
Okay, so you were in both very successful and not so successful teams. So what was the difference between the atmospheres of both locker rooms?
Yeah, well, 180-degree difference. Minnesota was obviously the most unsuccessful team I was on, and I suppose I felt like in Minnesota we were always on the back foot, always trying to stick finger in the dike, you know, trying to plug the leaks and stop the roof from falling in, and very reactionary. When I got to Chicago, it was quite the opposite. We were on the front foot, and we were taking the initiative about how to pick teams apart and how to focus on their weaknesses, and strategically how we were going to go about dismantling their game. But that was never a thought in Minnesota because we were too busy. Yeah, and it really is a mindset, because if you get on that back foot and you're not being proactive, other people are, and you're never going to outguess them or outsmart them or outcoach them or outplay them.
Okay, I heard you were involved into some marine advocacies.
Yep.
Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I can talk all day about that if you like.
How did you get involved?
Yeah, well, I'll start with that. When I was a kid, before basketball, what I loved most was fishing, diving, surfing, the ocean. As long as I had sandy feet and wet hair, I was happy. And then, in fact, when I got recruited to go to college in America, I went from the beach to the gym and I forgot my shoes. So I had sandy feet and wet hair, and I was playing basketball and they recruited me anyway. So then I went to America. It seemed like I was gone for a long time, and I wanted to bring my kids up in the same situation where you can go down and catch fish or dive for lobster, pick mussels off the rocks and eat them. I love that whole idea of being able to be in and around the ocean, and that appeals to me. And as a result, I suppose I got involved in the conservation stuff, because I do think that we're at a critical time now, or we may even be past the critical time, where as the ocean's resources deplete, it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And already with the ocean acidification, it's affecting weather patterns and all that sort of thing. So all I can really lend to it is awareness in Australia, and so I've been doing that. We fight campaigns around fishery stock management, around resort development in sensitive areas, that sort of thing. And I find it quite rewarding. We don't win them all, and sometimes we ask for something and we get halfway there, and that's better than nothing. But we've had several fisheries in Australia collapse lately, and fisheries that we thought were fine. So there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work to be done.
Can I go back to my...
Yes.
Okay. What makes a good basketball player?
Well, firstly, loving playing. That's the number one ingredient. You just got to love playing. You've got to understand what you're suited to do. The horses for courses thing. Someone has a joke asked me before about when were there going to be a Filipino centre in the NBA. Probably never, but I think there'll quite probably be a Filipino point guard or guard.
Yeah.
So understanding what you are and what you're best at, and then working on that. Perseverance. I think everyone talks about, I think today kids are so used to pressing a button, getting a result quick, you know, at McDonald's, all that stuff, that they fail once or twice, and I see kids giving up a lot these days. So whenever I talk to kids, I talk about perseverance. I mean, I didn't have any success until I was 20. You know, it took me a lot. No, it's not 18. I think doing it for the love of the game and persevering at it for that reason can lead to success. And if it doesn't lead to success in terms of at least in your heart you're successful because you're pursuing something you love. And I think that's a big lesson for kids to learn today.
Okay. You sort of answered my next question. Does height matter in basketball?
Yeah, well, it clearly matters. But if you ask Muggsy Bogues or Spike Webb or any of those guys, it doesn't matter at all. And they could all do things that I couldn't do. And I was blessed with height, and in some ways it hurt my game because I never really learned to dribble that well because I didn't have to. But it does matter.
Can eating the right food affect height too?
Yes, absolutely. Eating the right food can affect height. Nutrition's important, especially if you're playing a lot of basketball.
What did you eat when you were a kid?
Everything. Everything. I cleaned our house out. I mean, I grew up in hippie. You know, my parents were pretty much hippies. So it was lentils, there was brown rice. It was we grew our own, grew vegetables out of the garden. I ate a lot of vegetables, and obviously we had a lot of meat, a lot of lamb. But I think staying away from the sugars, staying away from the white bread, all those things help your body to grow better.
Was there ever a time you were made fun of because you were too tall?
Still, you guys made fun of me today when I came in the door. Every day, and that's cool. I mean, I've got 2 daughters who are 6'5", and so I've raised them to understand that you are what you are. You have to accept people for what they are, and I think it's one of the big lessons that the whole planet has, is to learn acceptance. And so the first way you learn acceptance is by demonstrating your own acceptance. If people want to laugh at how tall you are, that's cool, that's funny, you know. Unless you hurt yourself on a door jamb or a ceiling
Does that
fan.
happen to you often?
Yeah, not as often as it used to. But that's how I got this brow. See this brow here? It's from banging into doors.
What do you remember most from your days with the Lobos?
I haven't had that question yet. Good question. I remember the Lobos, for those of you who don't know, have an underground stadium which is called the Pit. So they dug a hole and put the basketball court at the bottom. And to get out of the pit, there's a ramp, and it's about 75 metres long, something like that.
Yeah.
I remember running up and down the ramp, and don't forget, this is at 5,000 feet altitude, with bricks in my hands, running up and down their ramp because the coaches were trying to teach me to play with my hands up. I remember that. And I remember the fans too, they were crazy. And I was back there recently with my family, and they gave me a nice ovation, and the kids got to see it, so I really enjoyed that.
You think they'll ever be successful again in the NCAA?
Well, they got a couple of Australians now, so probably.
They had pretty good luck with the first one, huh?
Yep. They didn't get anything. They didn't get very far in the tournament, but maybe they learned some lessons from that one. They got a great young point guard, Hugh Greenwood, who I think is going to be he's already and will be a good player.
Better than Shane Heal?
Different to Shane Heal. He plays defence. A few other things.
How is Shane? You guys keeping in touch?
Yeah, I see Shane now and again. He's now coaching the Sydney Kings.
Oh.
Just recently took that appointment, and so he's back in and around basketball again. He'll always be around basketball. He loves basketball.
Andy Gay's still in basketball?
Andrew's the king of basketball in Australia. He's everywhere. He's got his finger in every pie, you know. If you want to do anything in basketball, you better check with Andrew. Did you want to keep? Have you got any more questions?
Yeah. Did you have any rituals before playing?
Yeah, I always put my left sock, then my right sock, then my left shoe, then my right shoe, then I tied the left, then I tied the right. Oh, and tape left, tape right, sock, shoe, tie. Coffee. Used to have a
Before
coffee
a game?
before a game. Coffee and put it discreetly. Coffee and a visit to the bathroom. That was always very important before a game. Certain music, I would always listen to certain music. I had 2 or 3 songs that I would always listen to right
Like
before
what?
on the court. Well, you wouldn't know them. It's a band called The Cruel Sea, an Australian band. Very sort of, it's rock, but it's anyway, it's Australian rock and roll, but it's used to work for me pretty well.
Midnight Oil?
Early in my career, I used Midnight Oil a lot. When I was in college, used to listen to Midnight Oil. Then it became The Cruel Sea once I was in the NBA. Yeah.
Is basketball?
So I think I wouldn't play as much because I'm not exactly a track star up and down the court. Kendrick Perkins, someone like that I would match up on, but there's not many of him either. So answer your question is respectfully, yes.
Yes.
Luke, I don't think you'll be given ample credit for the things that you have done in the league, but without you, I don't think the Bulls would be as successful as what they did back in your days.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. And in relation to that, I want to ask you, aside from the three rings that you've earned as a world champion, what is your greatest achievement as an individual basketball player?
As an individual basketball player, I think you have to look at the whole career and say that to come from Fremantle, West Australia, the basketball backwaters of the world, effectively at that stage, and end up doing what I did. Not the 3 rings, but making the NBA, winning a championship, bridging the cultural differences, bridging the geographical distances. I think taking that all on and succeeding was my greatest accomplishment. After that, I had 3 triple doubles in college. I was pretty proud of. Well, I was proud of the whole package. I just think that I didn't set out to do that. I just kept going, persevering. I just kept going, and I ended up being a pioneer for Australia. And probably that's what I'm most proud of, pioneering effort.
Next question for me, Luke. You've seen how crazy Filipinos are about basketball. So why do you think we don't have any Filipinos playing yet in the NBA?
We've got to be careful with this question, but probably exposure. I don't think the NBA. I think now is a good time because the world is getting smaller electronically. So they'll get seen. I think also. Actually, no, it's a good question. I'm going to say I don't know. I'm going to say I'm surprised because there's so much love. I think Filipinos, from what I see, are athletic and quick and strong for their size. So all the ingredients are there. So it's got to be exposure to elite competition. I think if a Filipino gets out and gets exposed to elite competition consistently, maybe goes to college or something, then I think it's an eventuality. I think it will happen. I'll be very surprised it doesn't happen in our lifetime.
Maybe you can make that happen.
Yeah, I'm not the one to. Yeah, maybe.